Craig Pasta Jardula is co-host of the Convo Couch, which is a progressive talk show that airs on YouTube and Rockfin, discussing and analyzing the daily news cycles and introducing new grassroots personalities and candidates. Thanks so much for taking the time today, Craig. Pasta?
Thank you for having me, Janine. I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this.
So that raises the obvious question about why people call you Pasta, and I'm curious to know, especially about your vegan journey. And are you Pasta before you became vegan, or is that something that happened afterwards?
I've been Pasta for quite some time, and in fact, one time I was called Meatball when I tried to reject the nickname Pasta that it was given to me because my grandma would make me take 2 pounds of pasta to school every day for lunch and share it with the kids. So that's when the pasta came, and I was like, one of those traditional Italian guys. In fact, my favorite thing to make on Thanksgiving was the charcuterie board, which we called the antipasta, and it had all these different flavors of pork, whether it be salami, ham, prosciutto on it, whatnot. But ever since I've gotten involved with politics, seriously over the last 3 years, starting the Convo Couch, my views have changed a little bit, and I've been a little bit more aware and socially aware and aware of our planet and, what needs to happen. And the decision to be a vegan really came from an ethic decision, do it ethically. And when it just clicked in my mind, a friend of mine by the name of Jackson Fax, who also has a YouTube channel and a Rockfin, he'd come out to San Francisco while we were out there in a rally, and he convinced us. And like I said, it was an ethical decision. And he had explained to me, he says, Pasta, your biggest thing is you're an anti-imperialist. Like, you talk about America's intervention all over the world, especially in South and Central America, which leads to a serious migration process. At the time, excuse me, I hadn't had a banana in about 2 years because the majority of bananas were Chiquita bananas. They come from Honduras. And we had performed several coups there over the years for the fruit manufacturing companies, the UFC, the United Fruit Company, which is now Chiquita and Dole, so they could profit off the backs of all the Honduran people who had once nationalized their banana. So being the fact that I never really ate bananas for a while, Jackson used that avenue of telling me, well, can you really be, anti-imperialist if you're not a vegan? I mean, because that's where racism starts, and that's where we kind of manufacture consent to bomb these other countries and go in there. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, they started easy. That pig is a less species. That cow is a less species. That Latino person is a less species. And man, oh man, did it just click in my head. And when that clicked, and also the thing, which was, hey, man, we don't need this stuff. We don't need to eat animals. We don't need to have milk. It's not in our DNA. We're like a gorilla. 98% of our DNA is almost the same. Something clicked, Janine, and that was it. I haven't gone back since. It's been 7 months of eating vegan. I celebrate myself every single time I have a meal because I know no animals were harmed in the making of this process. I feel it's one of the best decisions, if not the best decision of my life. And I've been currently collecting gorilla shirts and gorilla mugs because I just constantly say to myself, anytime I feel that I need any beef or chicken or fish or I'm craving it, no, be the gorilla. And I am.
That is amazing. I love that. And there's so many alternative products now to fulfill those cravings, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
So it's not all that difficult. And have you noticed things in your body that have shifted?
Oh yeah.
Like, was it a difficult transition or?
Well, that first month was tough, like my body detoxing the meat, like just the nausea and the sweats, from going through withdrawals of needing that beef and pork and dairy in my system that had, I had that system. But, also that friend Jackson Fax, his girlfriend, was kind of like my guru in the very beginning. She helped me out. It was a little difficult that way, but really, to tell you the truth, when it mentally clicks and you do it for ethical reasons, it's a lot easier than you think. And of course, I mean, with a name like Pasta, I cook, and I cook a lot. So the whole household here, the whole Convo Couch, there's 3 of us. We live in one house. We have our studio here. We do our shows here. We all went vegan at the same time. And it's It's been amazing, and it's really not that hard because, like you said, there's no junk food for 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 vegans. And the thing that I thought I would miss the most was Nutella, but I've been rocking this vegan Nutella recipes, and they're better than the regular ones, guilt-free. So I think that I'm in the clear now, and I find no difficulty whatsoever.
It's a wonderful, wonderful story. And as a cook, you know, I don't know. I used to kind of not really enjoy cooking, and I think looking back, it was because of the blood and the like the bones and stuff. I just didn't enjoy doing that. And it's like there's a whole world of cooking opportunities that's available, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the new process is right. Like this is a whole new thing. Like, okay, so being an Italian boy, you know, my blood type was Genoa pretty much. You know, I used to enjoy like cutting the meat and doing all that stuff. And now I see it and I'm like, wow, it gets a little nauseating thinking about where it comes from now. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm constantly, you know, as a vegan now you're plugged into the vegan social media world. So I watch videos every day with cows that act like dogs and pigs that just rub up against people. So it's like, you know, it's nauseating when I see that. But yeah, like the opportunities as a cook of somebody who cooked before, this whole new method has been like, I've opened up Narnia, like a whole new world of like cooking, of like, you know, blending down cashews with butternut squash and nutritional yeast and a little mustard to make a sauce for macaroni and cheese. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's crazy. I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the opportunity to cook all these new items. And from being a pretty, you know, I mean, I had a lot of hours in that kitchen, you know, I know my way around the kitchen. It's just a whole new world. You know, we've been doing the Convo Couch. We were in the restaurant business before. I don't think I need to get back into the restaurant business, but I would love to kind of like venture into this whole new vegan me pasta, you know, like talk vegan with people who are like thinking about going for vegan the first time, showing them that it's easy. And a guy my size, a big guy like Pasta, hey, if I can go vegan, you can go vegan. And if you really are a green activist out there, going vegan is the ultimate way. It's the only way as far as I'm concerned.
It really is. I find that it's the center of intersectionality. I mean, it touches on feminism and racism and environment and everything. And so in your house, then the Convo Couch house is Fiorella and Johnny and you. Is that right?
The three of us, yeah.
That's the Convo team. And so tell me about the Convo Couch. How did that start then?
Well, you know, I met Fiorella when I was working in a restaurant. I was a training manager. I used to go from restaurant to restaurant, and we went to open up this new particular restaurant out in Woodland Hills. And I met her, and we were both burners and Bernie Sanders people. It was 2015, and I think they were coming up close to 2016, or was it the opposite way around? It was right around the election, pretty much, when we met, and we shared a lot of the same ideology, and we just stayed in touch, Facebook friends wise. And I had moved back to Florida to help take care of my stepfather, who was ill at the time. And I stayed in close contact with Fiorella. You know, we had always talked about everything that was going on. And when Bernie Sanders did drop out, he said, you know, you got to go run for office. You got to go run for dog catcher and teachers union and then all this and that. Get out there and do it. Well, you know, me and Fiorella, we kind of, you know, looked upon it as like, well, what about the media? They're the fourth branch of government. And, you know, he always complained about the media back then. Before nowadays he bows down to it. But back then he was always like anti-mainstream media. They don't give him a fair shake. And we saw all these young grassroots candidates, not even so much young, I should say grassroots candidates. There were some old candidates, but they never got the TV time. They never got a chance to get out there. So we were like, well, why don't we, you know, as a responsibility, it was like a duty. Why don't we start a little thing? We grab a camera. We'll go out to these rallies that we always go to that the mainstream media never comes to. We'll talk to these grassroots candidates and give them a chance to tell us about their platform. We know it won't have the same effect as mainstream media, but why don't we do that? And let's get this thing started. And we'll do a little commentary on what we feel is going on. You know, we started out doing it once a week in a studio in LA, and eventually moved to full time doing it. It's just been awesome. It's been a blessing. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is crazy. We're knee deep in all the craziness that's going on right now. The infighting on the left, this horrible election. But we also became election integrity activists along the way because we were so upset that what happened in 2016 through our investigation, it turned us into activists. And yeah, that's where we are today. 3 years later, we're just rocking the convo couch on Rockfin and on YouTube. And we've got a pretty decent following. And like I say, couldn't be blessed more. It's awesome.
Well, the wave of the future really is independent media. I think more and more, especially younger folks, are just turning away from the dominant cultural narrative or corporate narrative that's coming out of the corporate media and state media here in Canada. It's really disappointing. We were under the thumb of Stephen Harper for many years, and his government basically gutted our CBC and restructured it, and it's not the same as it ever was, if ever it really, or really was independent anyways. But so independent media, very important to support. And especially what I like about you guys, I mean, I'm Canadian, but US politics is so interesting. I mean, there's nothing going on here that rivals what's going on there. And so there's a lot to dive into. I really enjoyed the discussion. I want to talk about your adventures out into the world, because you were in Portland last summer and you were at the Capitol building. But before we do that, I don't think we can really just talk about the left and the right anymore in the US or really anywhere. There's so much more nuance to political presence and where people position themselves on that spectrum. And you and Fee did a really great discussion about that. Could you just run through that for us?
You're talking about when I made the video about progressive, neo-progressive, libertarian, whatnot. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about this right now because, I always consider myself a leftist libertarian. Our show is considered progressive. But where the Democratic Party has gone in this whole process, and a lot of the neo-progressives, we call them, that have gone with them, are anti-left, what we used to believe in. We used to believe in freedom of speech and civil liberties over here on the left. And now it's like the American political left doesn't even care. They have an authoritarian streak inside them. But I made those classifications, and it was pretty much 4 classifications. It was liberal, which is the same of neoliberal. It was neo-progressive. It was true progressive, and leftist libertarians. And I did it in hopes to identify people and their differences to hopefully think that, okay, this is the way we think differently, but we're on the left, right? Where do we think together? Where can we make bridges? And then how can we do that with people on the right too, who might have some of the same ideology? In fact, though, it's turned out to be a circular firing squad of what's going on right now. And it is a shame because I don't even know if I can consider myself a leftist anymore by American politics standards. I always did because I'm for a Medicare for all system. I believe we should have some type of system that's going to help people. If they can do it everywhere, they can sure as hell do it here. That doesn't mean I want to end all insurance. And if people want to keep their insurance, yeah, we have to find a way to make that happen. And that's also a problem now because the Uber left wants to just get away with all insurance no matter what. They really don't want to think how that really plays into civil liberties, where people, in the center or on the right, or even some leftists really take our decision of choice as something held high because it means it's a democracy where we're not forced to go this way or whatnot. So, I mean, like I'm saying, it's a circular firing squad right now on the left. I don't know where we're going to build these bridges. I don't know what's going to come out of this. Now that Joe Biden's just become president, if things have gotten worse, but I don't even know. I mean, you're in Canada right now. I don't even know what the left-right paradigm means anymore because I'm looking at certain Republicans that are speaking out now for civil liberties and freedom of speech and going after big tech and, understanding the merging of Joe Biden with the government and big tech, how dangerous it could be. So I know it's interesting for you in Canada, but put your seatbelts on, Janine. It's going to get even more interesting.
All right. Well, and this discussion you had with about the Boogaloo Boys as well. What a shocker. Who would ever have thought that these gun-toting guys have some of the same values as traditional lefties?
Yeah. Well, it's also, too, the fact that we're getting belittled for even talking to them. And that's the whole thing. The cancel culture on the left is out of control. Don't talk to these people. Don't say anything to these people. Just demonize these people. They are not our friends. They are the enemies. where, we've always on the station, Fiorello included, Johnny, me, we've always said, let's go talk to people who think differently than us. Let's not push them away. Let's not call everybody a Nazi and a racist, whatnot. Let's go talk to them and see if we could persuade them with our arguments on why they might be wrong. Or in this case, let them persuade us with their arguments and see where we can change and where we might be wrong. But unfortunately, that kind of culture is getting away from us right now in the States. And like I said, when I say circular firing squad, they're not even looking at the enemy. They're not even letting them speak. They're just boom, execution, boom, execution, boom, execution. And now this push for domestic terrorism, against domestic terrorism, they say things as, oh, it's to get rid of these MAGA people that are guns, these Boogaloo Boys. They've made the enemy. They don't want anybody questioning the government, whether it be on the right or the left. So yeah, I mean, didn't you find it quite interesting listening to that Boogaloo Boy? It sounded nothing like I thought it would be, but yet we're still getting chastised for speaking to the enemy.
Okay. So, the U.S. has a history of doing that, as you mentioned, with the South Central America Manifest Destiny, the idea that in order to fight our enemy, we have to other them, right? And that certainly is something that has happened with the Russians and with the Islamic people. And, it's just, so now that the enemy, it's like the calls coming from inside the house,
Yes.
But I did study in California for a couple of years. I went to college. And I remember one thing that we were told is that George Washington, he built a coalition that was, for whatever criticism we can have of the founding fathers, he wanted to listen to all the voices, right? So why is that a bad thing? Yeah.
I saw a tweet. Well, first of all, I like your statement. The call is coming from inside the house. That's an old school movie, so don't let people know your age there and stuff like that. It's when a stranger calls, right? Was it called?
I don't know. Yeah.
It's when a stranger calls. The call is coming from inside the house, and it is. In fact, we've been talking about this whole election thing, saying this isn't Russia, this isn't China. These are people within arm's length. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. The last part of that question you asked was what? I'm so sorry.
What do you know about George Washington? And just
George Washington. It's funny because I saw a tweet that said that, hey, George Washington had slaves. Shouldn't we impeach him? Making fun of the fact that they're still trying to impeach, Donald Trump right now. And I think that really just speaks volume to like not concentrating. In other words, concentrating on the negative, letting the negative be right there. Like, all right, who cares about the areas that we're similar that we can agree upon, that we can talk together about? Let's just concentrate on the things that we don't like, and they have this on the left. And now the establishment who runs this, the whole joint now being Biden and crew, they have this like mightier than thou kind of complex. Like they're the right ones. They're the moral authority and everything. They wear the cloak of virtuosity. You know what I'm saying? So it really is really scary. And yes, they don't look at those situations. When you talk about George Washington, how he talks to everybody, he built a coalition of people from all sides. And I really think they need to wake up, get their heads back to it. But once again, they're not even going that way. Instead of saying we need to talk to them, they're saying we need to deprogram them. And that is scary.
And the censorship thing that's going on, there's a lot of discussion about that in progressive circles, especially because you guys are getting shut down. I mean, you're already independent media struggling for funding to keep yourselves alive. And now you're being censored because of algorithms. People aren't able to find you in the search engines.
Yeah.
And so the whole censorship discussion is a really important one, I think, and it kind of starts with Julian Assange, right?
Oh yeah. Well, you silence him, you can silence anybody, right? We learned the Tulsi Gabbard thing when they shut her out, on Google, when she had just destroyed Kamala, and it was the most precious time for her to get out there and raise money for her campaign. Well, she said, if they can silence me, they can silence anybody, and they're continuing to do that. You know what I'm saying? They're going to continue to silence everybody. First, they demonetize you, and what I'm saying, they find a way, remembering that algorithm that they talk about, oh, it was the algorithm, you tripped the algorithm. Well, that algorithm was written by a person. You know what I'm saying? All that algorithm is just a tool like a spear gun to shoot people with. It's like, oh, it wasn't me, it was the spear gun. Yeah, but you pulled the trigger. and they don't like, conflicting voices out there. So what they do first is they shadow ban you. They don't even tell you. They take you out of that equation to get you more, more views, more looks. Then they demonetize you. They take down videos. They stop your momentum. A lot of times and it's kind of funny because the system is, especially with YouTube and a lot of these channels, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, not innocent until you prove yourself guilty. In other words, they'll take you down for something that's controversial, and they'll say, we'll prove that you are innocent. You prove that you're innocent, and then they put it back up. Not saying, hey, this is kind of questionable. Can you tell us why it's okay? Otherwise, we'll take it down. No, they do it the opposite way around. And that kills your momentum. As you know, in the media business, timing is of the essence. Who's there on the information first, talking about it, speaking about it, they'll get the clicks. So if they suspend you or take a video down for a couple of days, you file back for a copyright against the copyright, and then they say, okay, our bad, and they put you up. They've already done the damage. They've already kneecapped you. They've already hurt you. And a lot of these channels, like ourselves channel, the Convo Couch, it's flagged. They know it. They put up disclaimers on our videos still about the elections, and we haven't even talked elections on YouTube for a while right now for the fear of getting banned. So yeah, they are trying to silence what we call truth tellers, or just different opinions, different subjective opinions about the way they might look at things. But that's what it's all about. The media nowadays, the mainstream media, has become about propaganda and control. Just look at the way they've been handling this whole election thing. It's disgusting. You can't even talk about elections, otherwise they silence you or shut you up. And this was one of the worst elections I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, Glenn Greenwald's a good example of what they do to people who speak some truth and especially when an election is happening. Okay, so the election has happened, and so Joe Biden is signing some documents saying there will be no oil and gas drilling in federal lands. I saw that. He's saying no to the. I thought it was interesting that one of the first things he did was sort of pick a fight with Canada over a pipeline, one of many pipelines, but he's sort of created some animosity with us for whatever reason. But there's a lot about Joe Biden that is really not being discussed, and that, as you say, and we're not even allowed to discuss it. We're not allowed to hear about it. And I'm finding it really frustrating among, vegan crowds, vegan circles, who are, I think people just want to be so relieved. It's no more Mr. Trump. He was a bad guy. There's no doubt about that. But they just want this to be the answer. And unfortunately, that's not going to get us to where we want to be, right?
It's crazy nowadays that the answer to Donald Trump was Joe Biden, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they really want you to believe that this guy who couldn't fill my living room when he had an event got 10 or 12 million more votes than Barack Obama, who had the record, you know what I'm saying? And they're like, well, it's a little bit different. This was a mail-out one. Well, we've always had mail-out voting, mail-in voting, any way you want to look at it. So, I mean, and the irregularities are crazy. And yeah, I mean, listen, the forces that be, whoever's been doing this, whoever's been writing the script behind closed doors, did a great job out of it, because Donald Trump was the ultimate boogeyman for these people. And I don't understand why. I mean, there's a lot of things he said that were so stupid. I know there's a lot of people that were still talking about, well, the way he talked about Mexican people was awful, and it was bad. It really was and stuff. But does that really equate to the actions that Joe Biden has done over the last 47 years? And his words too, a segregationist who voted against federally mandated busing so that they can segregate schools and put poor men of color and women of color and other schools that have more of an opportunity. He was against it. He said he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. He talked about a fence built really high while he was pandering to a bunch of police unions and whatnot way before Donald Trump did it. There's no war that this guy hasn't liked. Isn't that the most racist thing that we could do, is go around and bomb indigenous people in their homelands? I mean, all you have to do is look the same way we looked at Hillary Clinton. This guy was worse. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I know these people, they really want to end it. Orange man bad. We even see people that we used to march with in the streets that we're no longer really tight and friendly with, saying like, oh, I bet you could believe that this new Secretary of Defense, he's the first, black man to hold the position. That's a breath of fresh air. I'm like, the dude was a missile contractor 2 weeks ago for Raytheon. That's not a breath of fresh air. So know how badly your friends and our friends and people out there want to end this and act like this is a step up or this is a positive move in any way, shape whatsoever. They're completely wrong. You don't give the keys back to the establishment who gave us Donald Trump in the first place. And I've been chastised for saying I'd rather sweat 4 years of Donald Trump than 8 years of Biden and possibly 12, 16 years of the establishment getting back in control. You know what? I'll take the criticism, stand by my words. It was an awful move. And the way they did it with elections was terrible. They rigged this last election. Bottom line, plain and simple. People say, where's your evidence? I got math. That's my evidence. Sorry for going crazy. The coffee got me.
That's why I invited you here, Pasta. I was really happy with Bernie. I was following Bernie. I was watching those rallies of tens of thousands of people and thinking, wait a minute, this could happen. This could really be the guy for the next election. And then Iowa, that's really where that all changed, right? With the coin toss and
Fiorella was on the ground when that happened, and it's so funny because the first coin toss we saw, she had just left that caucus, that area right there, and she went over to Bernie Sanders' the headquarters where they were doing the party, and all of a sudden we saw a coin toss going on there. And when Fiorella had left, she said it was all said and done. The math is done. Bernie got this many delegates. Pete got one. I think Elizabeth got one. And all of a sudden, they were doing a coin toss to take away a delegate away from Bernie and give it to Pete. And, they waited for the press to leave. They waited for everybody to leave. They pulled all this fugazi stuff. And then they got busted because they had some backups on the back end, catching their Iowa app and all their bullshit they were trying to do. But you know what? That was the only place that they were set and ready to rock and roll. You know what I'm saying? They made a lot of mistakes to campaign. We were trying to reach out to them as election integrity activists and trying to explain to them what was going to take place Super Tuesday in California and how the establishment was going to cheat for Joe Biden and what areas to look. But just like in 2016, Janine, 2020, Bernie Sanders bent the knee. He chose not to protest these things. What Donald Trump just did in this last election, when protesting these elections, Bernie Sanders should have done it. In 2016, he should have done it. He should have done it again in 2020. When you have the math on your side and you can explain to people like, hey, man, something's wrong. These voting patterns are off. This is where we look. You can almost pinpoint the area of where we need to look. And then you demand, hey, look at these machines. They're proprietary software. They're not, they're publicly funding, and we cannot even look in these things. We can't have an audit. We can't do a proper look into them. He should have been bringing attention to these things. And here's the thing, Janine. And I love Bernie Sanders. I support him in 2016. I supported Tulsi in 2020 because of her policies. But I was ready. When she had folded out or joined the administration because I thought there was going to be a connection of sort. I was ready to get back in the streets for Bernie Sanders in 2020. He wasn't ready to fight for us. And the way his actions have been and all his rhetoric and stuff, it's almost as if he's sheep herding people back into the Democratic Party right now. It is scary. So Bernie Sanders failed to do what he really needed to do. And that's when in 2016 in Florida, when the Bernie Sanders lawsuit came up, people who supported Bernie Sanders against the DNC, and the DNC said in court, federal court, that we can go into the back room filled with cigar smoke and put whoever we want. We should have planted our flag right then and there, Janine. And from that point, fight the establishment tooth and nail, fight the establishment for fair, clean, transparent elections, and we might have had a different result. But the forces that may be, the 2020 election, Bernie's staff, his cabinet, people from Center for American Progress like Fayez, Matt Duss, all these guys that he picked around them are just questionable people. So we're left here right now in a cluster F, if you know what I mean. So.
Right. But there is hope, I think, because the tens of thousands of people that listened to Bernie's message and believed in Bernie, the message is out, right? The tide has changed in terms of public opinion for, the idea of public health care should be a choice, I think, as one of many other choices, perhaps. But everybody certainly should have health care, especially in the middle of a global pandemic. And so when you talk about your concern that in another 4 years or even 2 years, there's an election in 2 years, that people will continue to be disenfranchised by the system and disappointed in the results of this election, and will continue to abandon politics altogether and not vote, or shift over and vote for a more right-wing guy, that is a genuine fear, I think. But now let's shift to going out into the streets. So you do go out into the streets and you do talk to these people. And you've been Portland and the Capitol were the two that I really plugged into. So I don't know where do you want to talk about what's going on out there, Pasta?
Well, obviously that was a little bit early in the game. That was in the middle of Trump's little reign. I mean, Trump has done some stupid things throughout the time where, civil liberties people, libertarians have questioned, one of them being he wanted to give everybody a year sentence for burning the flag. And we're like, what the hell are you doing, you asshole? And then he wanted football players to get fired for kneeling. And I was like, what the hell are you doing, you donkey? One of the biggest mistakes he did, I think he realized that early, was sending feds to Portland, to guard a federal courthouse that has a homeless encampment right in front of them for graffiti being put up there, and shit just went crazy. And we were out in the streets and we could see it, that people were bonding together. Mothers were coming out one day, all the chefs were coming out one day. Whatever his statement is, and I think it was like more of a play. He wanted to go after Antifa characters because that's what he was doing. He was unjustly pulling them off the streets, not reading them their rights, taking them, holding them. You know what I'm saying? And I don't care what the case may be, where, they were saying things were burning up all around the country. You still abide by the law. You know what I'm saying? And Donald Trump really messed up in that situation by doing so, by labeling Antifa as a domestic terrorist. You know what I'm saying? And he also didn't understand why a lot of those people were out there. He was immediately saying, oh, you got to protest fair, and Black Lives Matter has the right to protest, but Antifa should be held accountable. He wasn't realizing that these were a bunch of people out on the streets, that it wasn't just about George Floyd too as well. George Floyd was the spark that light the match, but people are poor. They're starving. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't know where they're going to live. They don't know how to put food on the table. And he never acknowledged that. He never acknowledged, in my mind, the homeless pandemic, where we have almost 750,000 people on the street. You know what I'm saying? And we saw a lot of those people out there. They were generally mad. And a lot of them were talking about the racism issue and stuff. But there was a lot of economics behind that got them to that point where they said, enough is enough. We're living paycheck to paycheck, and now you're killing us in the streets because of the color of our skin. So that was one part of it. But then also as of recently, talking to a lot of Trumpers out there, and a lot of them in there, we were at the Capitol building, and the majority of those people that were out there were peaceful, loving, protesting people that didn't like the election results. You know what I'm saying? We heard Donald Trump's speech at the Ellipse. And even though people are trying to conflate the whole situation and saying, you must never give up, we must never give in, it's very common to the speeches we heard at a Black Lives Matter rally or another protest and whatnot. He said we got to go there peacefully, whatnot. So I think that the big mistake is what the media has done on purpose, what a lot of Americans have done or not paying attention to, or just people watching, is realize that the real pain inside. Like I said, on the Capitol building, there are people that were pissed off, that got mad, and they went into that building, and whatever happens to them, happens to them. I mean, they were also giving tours out and stuff like that. But the majority of the people were pissed off because they felt that their elections were stolen from them. And it was so bad. Not acknowledging that, and not acknowledging the poverty on the streets, I think is a big issue, what we're all missing. And that's why I say a lot of us have a lot of things in common. And more in common from people on both sides. Now people on the left want to forget about the fact that they stole 2 elections from Bernie Sanders and say, oh, Donald Trump just, the establishment cheats in the primaries. It doesn't cheat in the general. Hello? We're getting screwed over here, all of us across the board. And times when we can come together, we haven't. And that is the sentiment on the street. Now, we're still polarized, different sides, whereas we'd like to get somebody from that side, bring them together, get them to talk, and see how much more we have in common, and see who the common enemy is, and that is the government keeping us all down.
Okay. So just a couple of things about the people hauling the people into the vans in Portland. I mean, we saw
Awful.
that. Yeah. I mean, was that coming from Trump or that? But that was people doing that to other people. It seems to me like for some reason, these guys thought, I can do this. I can do this. Like, did somebody say to him, you can do that now? Or was it just, I get the feeling I can do this and I'm going to take these people off the streets. And in the Capitol situation, they were allowed into the building.
Yeah. And then that sparked off some people. Well, here's the thing. There were feds out in Portland, right? So we were there. We were in the Bernie van, which we had transformed into a news van, which was parked about 200 yards. Not even, I wouldn't say like maybe 100 yards in front of the building, not even like 50 feet. It was like right across the street where the main federal building was. And we were literally covering the rally, covering the protest. It was peaceful at that time. We go into the van and all of a sudden hell breaks loose. And we're just hiding in the van as smoke's coming in. We're dying. They see us there. They start breaking windows, pointing their guns, tell us to get out. They were feds. There was Department of Homeland Security. There was marshals there. We were looking at their uniform. So the rules of engagement and the rules of grabbing people and questioning your domestic terrorist enemy are different. So they were just grabbing people off the streets. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was people who told Trump, and he was like, he gave the green light, like, go out there and find out this problem. Let's find out who these Antifa members are and crush them and stop them. But, the one thing that Joe Biden did say that was real is Antifa is an idea. It's not a centralized location where they're taking money from George Soros and doing things. It's a couple guys getting together and saying, let's go get on some gear and whatnot. Let's protect these people over here from the cops, and let's cause anarchy. You know what I'm saying? It's not a centralized situation. It's people picking up their own idea together in a room and going out and doing that. So it was a big mistake for Donald Trump to do that. Big mistake.
Well, and like you say, there were all kinds of people out in Portland. And, I mean, the homelessness and the housing crisis and climate crisis, these are all things that we've all been dealing with in Canada as well. And then came COVID, and I think, Jimmy Dore talks a lot about this, about that they're insisting everybody stay home and they're shutting down businesses, but they're not doing anything to support people, which is quite different than what's going on in other countries around the world. And we're watching with shock and awe, to use the phrase, how bad is it? Like, I don't think people really get what's going on for you folks.
You know what? Like yesterday, Gavin Newsom made a decision in California to extend the moratorium or whatever is the freeze. It's not even really a moratorium, the freeze up until the end of June. The only problem is they haven't dealt with any of the back money that's owed. You know what I'm saying? They haven't provided any rent relief whatsoever. And this is a part where Donald Trump failed. He should have used that bully pulpit. He should have got on the floor of the Senate and the House. He should have scolded those Republicans and come up with a serious bill. You know what I'm saying? To say, let's get people the economic relief. But it is bad. You know what I'm saying? They're giving us crumbs right now so we can barely eat, but they're not solving any of the problems. They shut down California. We couldn't work. A lot of our restaurant jobs are gone. Those places are closed. And it just keeps kicking the can down the road. So there's going to be a point coming up where you're going to just see a tsunami of evictions, and people are going to be living with other people to just try to tape it up and glue it up to make it work and stuff. And then the fact is that a lot of these small businesses are out. They're done. So what are you going to do? You're going to take a job at a corporation now for less money, for more hours, for crappier work. It's like they wanted to consolidate all their power. And they're doing it, and they're doing it economically. Look what Bezos is making now. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. And everybody is like, all these, and here's the thing, even like when you order food now off the apps, they're putting additional charges in to pay the drivers and stuff because they don't want to pay them because they want to hold on to the money and stuff. So all these apps, these gig workers who, make crap anyways, you know what I'm saying? That's all the job you have to look forward to. That's why when they start talking about, we got to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Well, that doesn't include all the gig workers, and they move so many people into working gig jobs, and now their boss is an app.
Well, I wouldn't describe Canada as a socialist country by any stretch, but we are, I think many of us, surprised at what our governments have done for us during this time. And I just want to let you know, we were also told to stay home, but we were given a subsidy. We were given $2,000 a month for several months.
Yeah.
Small businesses were given subsidies. They were given opportunities.
Did you have to pay rent?
I did have to pay rent, but there's been a freeze on rental increases.
Okay.
And no evictions. They're not allowed to evict anyone.
Does the $2,000 cover the rent market? I mean, does it still allow you a little breathing room, or?
Well, it depends how you live. I can almost live on $2,000, but I live a very simple lifestyle. I cook my own food, for example. That's a huge expense, right?
Yes.
But they've done things like and provincially it shifts. The federal government, though, has provided support to small businesses so they can pay their employees and pay their rent. So some small businesses have gone, but a lot of them are still here. A lot of the vegan restaurants are doing really well.
Yeah.
And recently, I think it was a provincial thing where they said to these driving app, the pickup people, skip the dishes and stuff, that they can't put that extra fee. So that kind of thing is going on. Like there's a lot of stuff that's going on. It's not necessarily supporting me directly, but it's supporting others. So it's keeping people employed. It's keeping people housed. There's a new attention being placed on at the homeless crisis, which we do have a lot of homeless in Canada. It's cold. It's disgraceful that there's 40, 50, 60,000 people sleeping out in a wealthy country like this.
How many you got?
It's hard to count, but last I checked, it was like 60,000, but we're a smaller
times 10 over here.
Yeah. And I've heard, Graham Elwood talks about that you can't drive in LA without seeing a tent city.
It's terrible. You go to the airport, every single bridge, it's tent city. I just went to a caravan protest for homelessness and whatnot, and Skid Row is growing. It's expanding. It's not going the other way. And we have like all these apartments open, that landlords own. We have all these old malls that are closed down. We have the area, we have the resources. We just don't have the political will because there's a profit motive on our homelessness. And federal subsidies and state subsidies are taken by these groups that are supposed to help the homelessness, and they put it in their own pocket while people are staying in the streets. And we also don't have health care. So the mental illness situation is just awful.
The whole healthcare thing is really disgraceful, is what it is. And so you had a couple of guests on recently to talk, lawyers who are trying to help folks with this rent freeze. I don't think people understand here that there's been that you guys haven't had to pay rent all these months, right? But one day they're going to come and they're going to want all that money. That's basically what's going on, right?
Well, that's the issue. The government, the state, nobody's come up and said, here's the solution for the back rent that's owed. They told people to stay at home, closed everything down, especially in California, ridiculous lockdowns where they weren't even letting dining places have outdoor dining at certain times. It was really, really hard. There's been little pockets where they've opened up. But yeah, that is the biggest issue. What are you going to do with the pass rent? I mean, right now, the situation was, it was supposed to end this month, where if you paid 25% of the rent for the last 5 months, okay, that would make you avoid evictions court. But the 6 months prior to that and the other balance of the 75% for the 5 months, that could still be sought out by your landlord in small claims court. So they can still put you on the hook for that, still garnish your wages, whatnot. And they shut everything down and told people to stay at home. So yeah, they can come looking for that money unless there's a solution that comes down the pipeline. And they haven't come up with a solution. They just keep kicking the can down the road. A lot of people have been asking Governor Newsom, like, what are you doing with the federal money that's been given to you? Can't you use some of that federal money to bail people out, what they owe and stuff? You know what I'm saying? Because if somebody has a mortgage, there's two different types of landlords, right? There's the big corporations. They don't have to worry about stuff. They can get their mortgage kicked to the end, what they owe. They might get a subsidy from the government to help them out. But then you have the individual landlord, for instance, that lives in one house and rents the other, and they rent the other house that helps pay them with their new mortgage over here, and with their job they can survive. So they use that other rental house as a form of income to help them out. Well, they haven't presented any solutions for them either. So what are you going to do when you don't present any solutions for the small landlord? You don't present any solutions for the renter. I mean, some of these small landlords, they're struggling. They're emptying the bank right now to pay their mortgage because they didn't get their mortgage frozen or kicked as a moratorium style way. So what are they going to do? They've presented zero solution. Meanwhile, they told everybody to stay at home and shut up and wear your mask. That was the big argument the other day. The Boogaloo boy who was on, there was a guy who followed him on that Jimmy Dore show who was where we saw him and whatnot, and was saying these people are anti-lockdown and we're telling people to stay at home. And they're like, we're not anti-lockdown because we think it's a hoax. We're anti-lockdown because we have no money. Our businesses are closed. We have no assistance. What do you want us to do? You know, so either open it up and let us deal with the pandemic, or if you're going to keep us at home, give us the finances to stay afloat. They're not doing it.
Right. Wow. Well, there's a lot that we're going to be interested in watching as this new administration unfurls. And thankfully, the Convo Couch is there, so we can find you guys on YouTube and Rockfin. Is there other places?
Well, those are the two main places. We're trying to get everybody over to Rockfin, the ROKFIN. That is a platform that is really special to us because they don't censor us whatsoever. There's been a lot of new areas, gray areas, where, for instance, if there was a debate on TV, you were allowed to take that debate because of the Fair Use Act and restream that debate or show that or talk about that and give analysis on it. Now, they're not allowing you to do that. In other words, NBC is owning the rights to the debates, or CNN is owning the rights to debates. They're trying to shut out discourse and conversations. Rockfin never censors us when we do those things. So if we want to put on a debate and give analysis on it, and we want to show something, you know, like Super Tuesday, literally YouTube took our video down, and we were here on the couch. It was me and a co-host, Nico House, while Fiorello from the Combo Couch was out and about going to polling locations, and we were just doing like CNN or the mainstream media does, like, hey, reporting, here are the numbers in Dallas, 20% and 20% of the vote is in, and here's what's going on in California, 15% of the votes in. We were just doing that like to give people an option to not have to watch mainstream media, and they took us down. Wow. And they really didn't give us a reason why. So they're trying to eliminate any competition or any dissenting voice or anybody who has a different opinion than the propaganda that's coming from the mainstream media, from the government. So we encourage people to go over to our Rockfin, because that is the place, and they take great care of us. They pay us with cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency is called Ray. It's part of the Ethereum network. We tell our audience they can join in the fun and get some crypto themselves, because it looks like this dollar is going to crash. That might be good for alternate forms of monetary systems like cryptocurrencies. So that's where we kind of push people there to go to, because YouTube, I mean, wow, you could call them fascist tube right now. They're taking down videos of anything about the election. They're taking down videos of anybody talking about, like, you know, participating in rallies in front of any elected officials' houses. They're talking about anything that they don't like to hear. And a lot of conservative voices, a lot of those populist right voices that are not like the old school conservative voices that talk about, you know, freedom of speech, and they talk about, you know, things within the government, the way the military is and the spending. They're shutting these voices down. So that's why we encourage people to go to Rockfin.
Okay. It's interesting how the capitalists don't like competition, right? They say it's about freedom of choice, and they use choice, the idea of choice, whenever it's convenient to them. But ultimately, they really don't like competition.
Nope.
It's very strange.
They keep eliminating it.
Right. And okay, well, you know what? There's a lot more we could talk about, but maybe you could come back another time and update us on what's going on.
I'd love to, and I'd love to share some vegan recipes with you, Janine. I can't tell you how happy and giddy I was to do this interview, because when I heard it was like plant-based podcast, I was like, wow, I got my first vegan interview over here. Like, awesome. People want to talk about my veganism, and I'm just so proud of it. I love it. It's the best thing I've done in my life. I'm going to continue to do it. I'm not going back, baby. I'm going full vegan all the way. And, you know, I didn't mention the body stuff. Like, you know, I've lost like 20 pounds and I'm still eating a lot of grains and a lot of, you know, vegan pizzas and my name's Pasta. I eat a lot of pasta, but, you know, I just feel so much better, you know, from going vegan. And, like I said, I would love to come back on, talk more recipes, talk more stuff. It'd be great.
Awesome. Did you do a blood check thing with your doctor before you went vegan? So you
No,
could,
no,
oh,
I
darn.
didn't. I didn't.
Yeah.
I should have, but uh, man, I just feel so much better. I feel so
The
much better.
energy, right?
Yeah,
Energy.
so
Yeah.
much better. It's great.
And you guys survived you survived COVID, right?
Yeah. That was rough, but we survived it.
And
Yeah.
before we go, can you just what was that like for
It
you?
was like a heavy flu. It was like a heavy flu. But that's the thing too. There's been this talk about this one drug called ivermectin, and they've been shutting a lot of people down about it, and it's been used nationwide, worldwide by a lot of other poor countries. We took some of the ivermectin. It's a parasite killer, and it really knocked it out. But it was definitely like a heavy flu. Um, we just had to write it out, and once we wrote it out, I just felt my symptoms were tired, aching back. I felt a little pinching in my heart, and when I went to get myself checked out, the nurse even said, well, it's a good thing you're a vegan right now because it's a good diet for your heart. And I was like, yeah, because it could have been worse and stuff, because I felt the coronavirus attacks you where you're weak. And even though I've become a vegan for the last 7 months, I haven't exercised properly. That's the next thing I got to do. I got to start getting hiking and get more into it and get into the yoga. I got to go full vegan and get that yoga going. So that's the plan for me moving forward.
Oh, it's so great. Well, thank you so much. It's been really great chatting with you, Pasta.
Thank you, Janine.
All right. And take care out there. Hey, stay safe.
I will, and we'll be in touch soon. Anytime you want me on, I'd love to come back on. I got to share my vegan Nutella recipe. I got a good one.
Awesome.
Thanks, Janine.